All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on something we see every single day but maybe don't think about enough, the price tag.
You know, it turns out it's almost never a random number. Nope, it's a really strategic decision. And by the time we're done here, you're going to understand the three core levels of thinking that go into it. How a simple number becomes this super powerful business tool.
All right, so let's get right into it. When a business has a new product, how do they even begin to decide the price? Well, the research shows they usually start in one of two places.
So they can either look inward, at their own spreadsheets and costs, or they can look outward at what everyone else is doing, their competition. We're going to treat this like a journey, starting with the absolute basics and leveling all the way up to a pro strategy. Okay, let's kick things off with level 1. This is the most intuitive, the most straightforward method of all, cost plus pricing. I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's simple, it feels safe, and it's all about your own numbers. A business just figures out, okay, what did it cost us to make this thing? Then they tack on the profit they want, and boom, there's your price. It's a really simple way to make sure you, at the very least, cover your expenses.
So think about a construction company, right? They're building a custom house. Every single project is totally different. So this method is their best friend. They just add up all the lumber, the concrete, the labor, all of it. Then add, say, a 20% profit margin right on top. And that's the final quote for the customer. Easy.
But what if you're not building a custom house? What if you're like a retail store selling hundreds of different phone cases? Calculating the exact cost for every single one would be an absolute nightmare. That's why they use a much simpler version of this, and it's called markup. And this is where it gets really interesting, because you get to see how that final price you pay actually gets built layer by layer. So check this out. The manufacturer makes something and sells it for $5. Then the wholesaler buys it, adds their 20% markup, and sells it for $6. Then the retailer gets it, and they might slap 100% markup on it, selling it to you for $12. See how that works? Every single step in the chain adds its own cut.
Okay, quick sidebar, but this is a super important piece of business lingo. People use these terms interchangeably, but they're not the same. Markup is your profit as a percentage of the cost, but gross margin is your profit as a percentage of the final selling price. It's a subtle but really crucial difference. It's basically two different ways of slicing up the same pie.
But, and this is a big but, there's a huge problem with only looking at your own numbers. You're pricing in a total vacuum. Sure, you've guaranteed your little slice of profit, but you've completely ignored what's happening in the real world. What if people would have happily paid way more? You're leaving money on the table. Or worse, what if your costs are so high that your final price is just laughably out of touch with the market? That right there, that brings us to level 2.
So let's move on up to level 2, competition-based pricing. This is where you finally take your eyes off your own spreadsheet and you start looking over your shoulder at the other cars on the road.
Now, with this approach, your price tag isn't just a number anymore. It's a strategic message. It's a signal to the world. Are you going to price below your competitors and be the low-cost leader? Are you going to match them and say, hey, we're on the same level, but our service is better? Or do you price above them to send that crystal clear signal? We are the premium, top-shelf option here.
And look, this method is a great reality check for sure. It keeps you from being totally out of sync with the market, but it has this one giant, massive flaw. You're basically assuming your competitor is a genius who's figured it all out. But what if they're just guessing? What if they're just copying their competitor? You could end up with a whole industry of businesses just looking at each other like the blind leading the blind, and all of them are ignoring the single most important person in the whole equation.
And that brings us to the question that changes the entire game. It's the question that takes us to the final, most sophisticated level of pricing.
All right, welcome to level 3, value-based pricing. This, my friends, is where the real pros play. So for a minute, I want you to just forget your costs. Forget what your competitor is charging. This is about one thing and one thing only: figuring out what your product is actually worth to the customer. Not in some vague, fuzzy way, but in cold, hard cash.
Now, I know that sounds kind of
abstract, maybe a little fuzzy, but there's actually a super clear 4-step process for figuring this out. And we're going to walk through it right now with a great real-world example that'll make this whole thing click.
Okay, so let's check out our case study. We've got an auto repair shop called Autocar Ulises. They need to figure out how much to charge for an engine tune-up. And they know that for most of their customers, the next best alternative is to just go down the street to their main rival, Ferrari and Mamani.
Okay, step 1, find the reference value. Pretty simple. The competitor, their rival, charges $80 for the same job. So $80 is our starting point. That's our baseline.
Okay, now for steps 2 and 3. We identify the differences and put a dollar value on them. First, the positives. Autocar Ulises has a way better location. It's more convenient, and customers figure that saves them about $20 in gas, time, maybe a taxi fare. So we add $20 to the value.
Plus, they were just voted most reliable in a local magazine. So there's this extra peace of mind, right? And customers feel that's worth about another $15. So let's tack that on too.
But it's not all perfect. They do have a small negative. The wait time when you come to pick up your car can be a little long. Customers find that inconvenience is worth about, -$5. So we have to subtract that from the total value.
And here we go, step 4. We just do the math. We started with that $80 reference price from the competitor. We added $20 for the great location, another $15 for reliability, and then we took away $5 for the annoying wait time. You add it all up, and the total perceived value for an informed customer is $110. That's the magic number. Okay, so we've leveled up, right? We went from Simple Cost Plus to looking at competitors all the way to this sophisticated value-based pricing. So, the big question is, which one should a business actually use? Which one is the right one?
Well, here's the secret. The smartest businesses, the real pros, they don't just pick one. They actually use all 3 together. Think of it like this. They use cost-plus pricing to set a floor, the absolute minimum they need to charge to not lose money. Then they look at their competitors to set a realistic ceiling and stay in the ballpark. But their final price, where they land that plane, that's anchored to the value they create. They aim to price just under that total perceived value, so they capture most of that extra worth, but you, the customer, still feel like you're getting a fantastic deal.
So from now on, when you look at a price tag, you'll know. It's not just some random number. It's the final sentence of a really strategic story. A story about costs, about competition, and most importantly, a story about what that company thinks its product is truly worth to you. So the only question is, the next time you go shopping, what story is that price tag going to tell you? Thanks for watching.